well, I can't change that I was in a car accident. I can't change that I broke 11 bones. If I never walk again and I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life and I can't change that, the only thing I can choose is how I experience every moment. In life, we don't get what we want just because we want it. You know, we all want to be wealthy and healthy and happy, right? You get what you're committed to, period, right? That's it. Either you're committed or you're not. But yeah, I'm so grateful for the cancer because I'm the dad that my kids deserve now because I almost lost them, you know, and they almost lost me. And I'm the husband that my wife deserves because of that cancer journey. Love the life you have. Be at peace with where you are while you move in the direction that you want to go.
So I don't know if you remember when we first met.
Archangel.
Yeah, but do you remember what year?
No.
2015.
2015. It'll be 8 years this year.
That was like baby Ruby in the coaching industry because I had just started coaching in 2014.
Yeah.
And I was invited on scholarship to Archangel by Geo. I think he gave out like a couple scholarships and I got one.
Nice.
Felt like I was way out of my league. Met a lot of people, but didn't connect with a lot of people. But we connected because we had lunch one day. And I think I sat at your table. And I still remember this to the day. We were talking about you writing your book. And you were like, I'm going to give you the number one piece of advice on writing a book that I wish someone told me. And I was like, hey, what is it? And you said, you turn your screen way off. Don't look at what you're typing and just type.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Turn the brightness all the way off.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, like I did actually do some of that practice when I was writing my book years later. So thank you.
Did I tell you who that came from? So do you know AJ Yeager?
No.
So he's here in Austin. But, anyway, so he taught me that. He wrote his first book when he was 16. And he learned that at 16. He taught. I was probably like 19 when he taught that to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's been a while, and you know, I know you, and I know a lot of people in my audience know you. A lot of people listening and watching know you, but there's also parts of you that I feel people don't really fully know.
Sure.
And I want to start with the trauma-informed definition of resilience. Okay.
All right.
Because I see you as someone who is incredibly resilient. And I believe that everyone has resilience in them, but it's a muscle. We have to develop it.
Yeah, I agree.
And so the actual definition from a trauma-informed perspective is resilience is defined as the innate capacity of a human to return to its original inner state or expression. Resiliency is built when the individual has access to proper resources and support. So you have been through a lot in your life. And I know that there's been specific traumas or I like to call them initiation points.
Right.
And through each one, it seems like you've been able to rise even higher into your calling. And I'm curious to know, what is your personal relationship to your own resilience?
Yeah. It's interesting. So something you said there in the definition, it was the second part of it where you said something about it, you know, that it's built when people have the resources that they need, right?
Yeah.
And that's a distinction that I actually, during a plant medicine ceremony that like came through me, or to me, was that, Hal, I being, you know, God, I have put you through these experiences for your purpose so that you can influence other people, serve other people, help other people. But if you notice, he said, I've always given you I've made it very difficult, but it kind of goes back to that Bible quote that, you know, I never give you anything, won't give you anything you can't handle, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, I've given you all the resources that you needed to get through all of them in terms of people, in terms of mental models, right?
Right.
You know, the right mentors that came in my life that taught me this, you know, like when I was 19, I learned the 5-minute rule, which was my mentor taught me. I started in sales, and he said, sales is like a microcosm for life. In terms of adversity. He said, you're going to face things every day, multiple times a day that people encounter occasionally. Like occasionally people fail. They have
Right.
failure or rejection. I think that's a rare occasion that someone's being rejected. You're going to get rejected 5 times a day, 20 times,
Yep.
right? And he said, so you need tools to manage that mental, those challenges. And he taught us the 5-minute rule. He said, when somebody cancels their order, cancels their appointment, doesn't show up, this is why salespeople quit. He said, because these adversities stack and stack and stack until they finally go, dude, I'm going to go get a 9 to 5. I can't handle this anymore. And I for sure had those moments, right? On the night on the phone, 20 calls, 5 or 10 no answers, 5 people saying, don't ever call her again. I hate you. Right. And I'm like, why would you? I'm a nice person. Like, why would you do that? And so he said the 5-minute rule is that whenever you encounter anything that upsets you, you set your timer on your phone for 5 minutes. And you give yourself 5 minutes to feel all the emotions that come up. You don't suppress them. You don't just, you don't just keep going. You feel them. And, bitch, moan, complain, cry, vent, whatever you got to do. Feel your emotions. And he said, but there's no value in sustaining these detrimental, painful, unpleasant emotions for an extended period of time. So he said, when the timer goes off, you say 3 actually, I don't think he taught me the 3 words. I later developed what I would say, can't change it. Simple acknowledgement. I can't change what's happened. But he said when the timer goes off, you acknowledge you can't change what happened 5 minutes ago. And this is true whether it was we're suffering over things from 5 decades ago, right? And the thought of what our parents did to us or the trauma we suffered as a child. It wasn't fair. I didn't deserve it. I am the way I am because of we really are in this victim mindset. And he said, so after 5 minutes, you go, I can't change it. I have 2 choices. This is true for all of us, right? I can either continue to resist reality and wish the thing didn't happen that happened 5 minutes ago and live in a state of delusion. And what I learned later by reading Eckhart Tolle and these other, authors is that resistance is the source of emotional pain. That we think that the thing that happened is why we're upset. You said, of course I'm angry. We also have something to point at. Look at what she said. Look at what he did. Look at what happened. I hit traffic and of course I'm upset. And we think it's the thing, but it's actually our resistance to reality. It's wishing it were different. And to the degree that we resist reality determines the degree of emotional pain that we feel. And so I learned this, and and like many people listening or watching, when I first learned this, I'm like, dude, 5 minutes? I'm not going to get over something in 5 minutes. Like just because my timer goes off, I'm not that doesn't mean I'm over it. I'm still going to be upset, right? And I remember there's 2 really cool little stories that happened within the first few weeks of me applying the strategy. And by the way, this is all one of the major tools that if I didn't meet that mentor, the irony is I started selling Cutco and I got in a car accident after I gave a speech at a Cutco conference. So the irony is if I hadn't started selling Cutco, I wouldn't have been on the highway at that moment. And if I hadn't started selling Cutco and had that mentor, I wouldn't have learned the thing that enabled me to deal with the adversity of being hit head on by a drunk driver and found dead at the scene. And so, but when I first started, I thought 5 minutes is enough time. And I remember this woman didn't show up to her appointment. I drove all the way out to her house. I was super excited. I needed this appointment, and it was my first week, and she didn't show up. And there was a note we don't need knives. And it was a 45-minute drive. And I was like, are you kidding me? Who does that? She had my number. I talked to her, and she just leaves me a note and no flakes on me. And so I'm in my, so I get in the car and I'm stewing. And at this point, it was automatic. He's like, just you set your timer as soon as you can. Set the timer, and I'm going, I can't believe she did that. What a blah, and then timer goes off, and I'm like, and I snoozed it. I'm like, I need 5 more. I'm like, I'm still pissed. I'm like, see, and it to me, I was like, this validated. I'm like, see, 5 minutes isn't enough. You're not going to get over something in 5 minutes. But here's something that so profound, Ruby, that happened is it was elevating my consciousness every time I set the timer. It went off, and for the first few, for quite a few times, I was still upset longer than 5 minutes. But I got shorter and shorter and shorter at realizing, I can't change it. So I can either that first decision continue to be upset, or I can accept it fully and be at peace with it. Those are really my only 2 decisions: continue to be miserable and self-create and perpetuate emotional pain, or accept it and be at peace with it. And I think a really important distinction is that you've got, painful emotions over on one side and pleasant emotions on the other. When you accept life exactly as it is, it doesn't mean you're happy that thing happened 5 minutes ago or 5 hours ago or 5 days ago. It's more powerful than that, though, because happiness is an emotion. It's fleeting. Happy 1 minute, new information changes that. Now you're angry, you're sad, you're scared, right? So the way I look at it is that you've got your painful emotions on one side and your pleasant emotions on the other side. And then if you bring the hand that I'm waving on the right for the painful and the hand on the left for the right into prayer position in the middle, that's the state of inner peace. Mm-hmm. And inner peace is not an emotion, right? There's an emotional kind of feel to calm and, peace, but it's a state of consciousness. And whereas emotions are fleeting, states of consciousness I find they're ongoing, they're underlying, they're ever present, and you return to whatever state of consciousness you've conditioned. So if you've conditioned the state of consciousness that is inner peace, then yes, disturbing news might create an emotional response where you're scared or upset or whatever, but we always fall back to our state of consciousness. If on the other hand, your state of consciousness that you live in perpetually is fear, then that thing that happened, that bad news or whatever, right? If you're receiving that in a state of consciousness that is fear, it amplifies the detriment and the pain, and right, it blows that out of proportion. So first time I set the timer, I'm like, 5 minutes, it wasn't enough, need more time. I'm validated. I knew 5 minutes wasn't long enough to get over something. And then the magic was this, or the miracle, I should say, was this. It had to have been in the first couple of weeks. It was the night before orders were due. I woke up Sunday morning, which is the hardest day to schedule appointments, right? Everybody's like, I'm not having you over to show me knives. But I was like, I was like $2,000 away from my goal for the week. And I got on the phone and I ended up scheduling 2 appointments for the same day, right? Awesome. Okay, cool. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to do it. $1,000 per appointment, not easy to average at that point, but I was like, I'm going to do it. And I go, first appointment, buys nothing. I'm like, oh God, I got to sell $2,000 in the last appointment. I end up selling $2,300 to this woman, like late afternoon. And I'm on cloud 9. I call my manager. I'm like, Jesse, I just sold $2,300. I'm over my goal for the week. And he's like, not only are you over your goal, that makes you the number 1 rep in the office for the week. Mm-hmm. I'm on cloud 9. I'm elated. I'm celebrating. I'm spending the commission in my head. I'm like, ooh, what can I buy with that money that I just made, right? And at like 9, just after 9 o'clock at night, the woman calls me. And she says, hey, I'm so sorry. My husband came home and he was so mad that I spent all the money on knives. I have to cancel the order. And I was like, no, like, no. Like, in my head, I'm like, no, I'm number 1 for the week. I hit my goal for the week. I need that money, right? And I remind her 15-day guarantee, all this stuff. And it's done. Mine's made up, cancel the order. And I was like, no. So it was like automatic at that point. I set the timer for 5 minutes. I'm like, I can't believe she did that. You stupid husband, right? Like, if he would have been there, he would have loved the knives as much as she did. Like, what am I going to do now? I'm like, well, obviously I can't change that. But it's like, I'd already been processing, moving through the challenges. So I just quickly was like, well, I guess all I can do is wake up tomorrow morning and get on the phone and accept that I didn't hit my goal for the week. And Ruby, here's the miracle. I pick up my phone and there's 4 minutes and 32 seconds left. I can picture it. And I start to set it down and I go, why don't I just say can't change it now? What's the value in me spending the next 4.5 minutes being upset over something that I cannot change when I could just go enjoy the evening? Like, I can't get on the phone, but I can go watch TV, I can do whatever. And that's when I realized, looking back, that simple 5-minute rule and that can't change it mantra, that was the tool that elevated my consciousness to be able to accept life exactly as it was. And I realized where at first I thought 5 minutes isn't nearly long enough to get over something. Mm-hmm. The adversity on that second time, right, losing the biggest order I've ever had in my career the night before I was number 1 in the office compared to a lady no-showing, which I couldn't get over that. But after just a couple weeks, I realized 5 minutes I'm not going to waste 5 minutes of my life ever again. Mm-hmm. Resisting my reality and wishing it were different when it's not. It doesn't change things. It just makes you miserable. And in that moment, I'm like, I'm going to go by the 5-second rule. I don't need 5 minutes. I'm going to go 5 seconds. Like, give me 5 seconds to go, son of a bitch, oh, I can't believe it, right? Like, oh, release it, and then go, can't change it, move on. And so when I was in my car accident, I came out of the coma, and I was in a coma for, just for people that don't know, I was hit head on by a drunk driver at 80 miles an hour. My car spun off the drunk driver. The car behind me crashed into my driver's side door at 70 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. The entire left side of my body was crushed. I broke 11 bones. I was found dead at the scene. I actually bled to death. My heart stopped beating for approximately 6 minutes.
And if people actually watch the Miracle Morning movie, they'll see
it's the opening
car.
Scene.
It's
the car,
insane.
Yeah.
I have never seen anything like that. And you look at that pancaked car It doesn't even look like a car with the exception of the seats.
Yeah.
That's how you know.
Yeah.
To, first of all, even have a body to pull out
Yeah.
is one thing. But to make it through that experience, especially after what you were told, you were dead on the scene, literally dead, flatlined on the scene.
Yeah.
And then you were told you wouldn't be able to walk. You were in a coma. I mean, this is like what you said earlier about resistance. You know, the saying from the movies, resistance is futile.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that it's so true.
So true.
Because one person can look at that and wake up in the hospital and say, well, great, I'm fucked. Life sucks. But what you're addressing, and I'm so happy that we're starting here, is the actual acknowledgement of what has happened. Not the bypassing of it to get to the happy parts of life, but the let's face what is here and present. Let's face what is real so that from here we can move forward.
Yeah.
Because I believe that is the missing piece that a lot of people don't understand with concepts that you are teaching the world. So keep telling the story with the car accident.
Yeah.
You're in the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, thank you for that. Number one, I realized that I'd been talking the whole time, which I tend to do. So feel free to interrupt me at any point. Some interviewers are like, oh man, I really wanted to ask you more questions. And some are like, dude, that was the best interview ever. I just like it was so easy. I asked you one question and you answered it for 60 minutes. Cool. So I came out of the coma and I don't even out of the coma. And I don't remember the first probably few days. In fact, maybe the first 6 days, very fuzzy. I blur the line between what I remember and what I've been told vividly by friends and family that told me, this is what you said, this is what you did. And I literally don't remember because I suffered brain damage, immediately. Permanent brain damage, which my wife and kids will tell you is still a real struggle. It's a real thing. So I came out of the coma and within a matter of days, I'm laughing, I'm telling jokes, I'm just super positive, and I applied the 5-minute rule. I'm like, well, I can't change that I was in a car accident. I can't change that I broke 11 bones. If I never walk again and I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life and I can't change that, the only thing I can choose is how I experience every moment. And that's, I'll mention this as planting a seed. That's the future of my work or the next phase, right? So the Miracle Morning is my life's work. The next book that I actually just sent the chapter. So the new updated and expanded edition, not to get off track, but this will circle back, of the Miracle Morning book is what I'm writing right now. So it's going to come out. It's been the 10-year anniversary just happened. And so in September, it's the first time ever the Miracle Morning will be traditionally published. It's been self-published for 10 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
That
is huge.
It's traditionally published in 37 languages in 100 countries.
Right.
And so basically my agent's been looking for the right publisher in the US because they go, it's been proven that if we put it in retail, it goes crazy. They're like, it's never been in retail in the United States, right? So we finally found the right publisher. And doing this updated edition, I want to really make it different. I rewrote the entire book. I kept the flow, the chapters, orders are the same, but I wrote it from a place of consciousness that I wasn't at 10 years ago, right? The whole book's been polished. But the other thing is I'm adding 2 chapters, the Miracle Evening and the Miracle Life. The reason I'm saying this whole thing, this is the backstory of the Miracle Life is my next book. And the Miracle Life is the paradigm. So whereas the Miracle Morning is a practice for personal development, the Miracle Life is a paradigm for personal fulfillment. And it's based on this premise. There's a lot in life we can't control. The one thing we can control is how we choose to experience every moment of our lives. Meaning, bad stuff's going to happen. Are you going to be at peace with it? Or are you going to resist it and wish it didn't happen? Right? Life's going to suck at times. Are you going to be unhappy and use difficult circumstances as your justification why you're not happy, you're angry, you're frustrated? Or are you going to choose to be the happiest and the most grateful you've ever been while you endure any circumstances? And that for me was when I came out of the coma. The doctors called my parents after I was out of the coma for about a week. I was in the coma for 6 days, out for a week. My parents get called in by the doctors, unbeknownst to me. I didn't know. I knew they were meeting, but I didn't know what the conversation was. It was like an update on my status. And I had flatlined 2 more times in the coma. So like it was very touch and go, right? Dead at the scene. I mean, so it's like my parents are just going like, please don't take our son. And we might circle back, but my sister died when I was 8. So like they had already lost a child. They had lost their youngest, and now they're looking at their oldest, their firstborn, me in a coma and hooked up to tubes and broken bones and this and that. But the doctors called him in and they said, we're concerned with Hal. Physically, he's stable now. Like he should live a long life. But we've told him you're probably never going to walk again. You have permanent brain damage. My body was, it's scarred beyond belief. The whole left side got all these holes in it and broken bones. And they said, Hal's always smiling and laughing and joking and making us laugh. And they said, that's not normal. They said, not for a 20-year-old young man, let alone any age, but 20, that's being told he's never going to walk again. So they said, we've seen this before. It's actually not uncommon for accident victims that cannot accept their reality, that they just check out. Like you said, they bypass, right? It's like, I can't, let's just tell jokes, right? Like, let's focus on, right?
Let's fast forward to the good parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they said the emotional healing can't begin until he faces what's happened. They said he's probably covering up, he's deep down, he's probably scared. He's probably sad. He might be angry with the drunk driver. He's, maybe depressed. And they said, we need you to talk to him and find out how he's really feeling so that we can get to the bottom of it. He can admit it. We can get him to talk through it, right? So my dad came in and he sat me down, and his eyes are, I think he'd been crying or about to cry. And, it's obviously a lot of crying during those couple of weeks or months. And he said, Hal, I want to talk to you. And he said, how are you really feeling? I know that when your friends are here, you guys are joking and laughing. And he said, but like at night when the lights go off, the TV goes off, and you're contemplating what has happened to you just 2 weeks ago and what the future is like. And that, you might never, the doctor, I know you say he said, I know you say you're going to walk in, Hal, but doctors are saying you might not. And how are you really feeling? Are you sad? Are you scared? Are you angry? Are you depressed? And I said, I went inside because I was like, all right, he's really concerned, and am I not processing my real right? I really went inside and it took me probably less than 30 seconds. And I go, Dad, I thought you knew me better than that. He said, what do you mean? I said, remember I live my life by the 5-minute rule that I learned in my Cutco training? He said, Hal, I get that. He said, but that was for much milder adversity. That was for no sales and no showed and canceled appointments. This is a little different. I said, it is and it isn't, Dad. Yes, this is much more extreme adversity, but that 5-minute rule and that principle of accepting reality exactly as it is and being at peace with it is more important now than it's ever been. I said, if I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life, I can't change that I'm in a wheelchair, but I can choose to be the happiest, most grateful human being you've ever seen in a wheelchair. And Dad, I've already visualized that. I've imagined that. That's what I'm choosing. I said, but I've accepted the worst case scenario and that I never walk again. I'm at peace with life exactly as it is. I said, but I'm not surrendering to that as the only possibility. I'm visualizing walking every day. I am praying about it every day. I am meditating on my body healing every day. I said, Dad, I'm focusing 100% of my energy on what I want, while I'm 100% at peace if what I don't want comes to pass, right? I think that's hard for people, maintaining that dichotomy of like, it's like if the more you want something, the more you are attached to it being that way, and you're disappointed or distraught if it's not that way.
Right. And then on the flip side, some people believe, because I've had clients go through this, well, if I accept my reality right now, then that means I'm going to be stuck here. And that means that this is my place and I'm not going to get to where I really want to be. But truly, I always say the first 2 steps to change is you have to acknowledge, one, and then you have to accept.
Yeah.
Because through that acceptance, you can be or feel at peace with what is, and then go and create what it is that you want. But you're at peace with where you are. So you're not always struggling with where you're at while you're trying to reach for something that's not yet in your reach.
Yeah, which is a state of delusion. Wishing that things were different than they are. Wishing you were further along than you are. No, it's like love, like the tagline of my first book, it was called Taking Life Head On. Hardly anybody read it, my first book I self-published a long time ago, but the tagline was, love the life you have while you create the life of your dreams, right? And most people were waiting. A guy just read, you ever read, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Maybe you can actually, this would be a huge value if you know the pronunciation. Thich Nan.
Nope, can't pronounce it. I don't know either. I feel like I don't think anyone knows.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I was like, I read a passage from his book on my podcast yesterday, and I'm like, I should have Googled pronunciation because I'm telling you something. Yeah, Thich Nan Hat or something. Yeah. Anyway, but I'm reading his book, Pieces Every Step. Read that one?
No.
Really good.
Sounds great.
So good. And all of his books, I was just reading the previews the other day on Amazon, just the Kindle I'm like, oh my God, they're all so good. There are probably a lot of overlap, but he's like an expert in mindfulness. And essentially, he said, we're very good at planning to live, but we're not very good at living. He said, we'll sacrifice 10 years of our life to get that diploma, right? We'll work tirelessly so we can buy that house, buy that car, do that thing, right? But he's like, we're great at planning to live in the future someday, but it's perpetual. It's a state of being that you live your entire life waiting for someday to be happy, to feel like you made it, to feel fulfilled, to feel worthy, right? Versus like, no, I accept my life exactly as it is. I love my life exactly as it is. But wait, you're struggling financially. I know, but this is my life. I can either love it and enjoy every moment while I make it better, right? To your point of, it doesn't mean you're resigning yourself to, right? Accepting something and resigning yourself to it it's not the same thing. No. It's just acknowledging this is how it is. I can be at peace with it while I go kick some ass and make things better.
It's like escapism in a way. A lot of people live their lives in that way, especially I'm very much in the plant medicine space, especially in that space. Like they continue to go into ceremony because that's where they'd rather be. But you're not facing the reality in your 3D life, then how do you expect to ever get to where you want to be? There is an acceptance that needs to be experienced for us to really fully experience life. Yeah. And this is, like I said, this is why I'm so happy we're starting here, because it's really easy, especially for people in my community, to look at a book like Miracle Morning and be like, affirmations, meditation, visualization, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of talk about that, and there has been for a long time in the spiritual community. But the reason why Miracle Morning works is because of the context behind it and the depth from which it is rooted in. This isn't a stand in front of the mirror saying, I am the richest entrepreneur in this industry. It's not that. It's not delusional. No. It's very much rooted in reality. And it's important that people understand that this was also not just birthed from a delusional place. It came from a place of reality, of your own life experience, and then your own life practice. And I think that's the reason why it works, and that's the reason why you've been able to cultivate such a huge community around it, is because of the realness to it versus it being something really fluffy and bypassy and you know what I mean? There's just so much of that. And so with the car accident's one thing. And then we move forward in your timeline. At this point, were you practicing Miracle Morning after the car accident?
No, so the car accident was December 3rd, 1999. I was 20 years old. And then Miracle Morning, the concept, not the book, but in my own life, it was 2008. The U.S. economy had crashed. So we're talking 8 years later.
Got it. So let me first go here. Prior to 20, your upbringing, other than the Cutco 5-minute rule, which is great. Yeah. Because there is an importance in feeling our feelings versus bypassing them. Yeah. What do you feel prepared you for something like that? Yeah. I mean, if you're open to talking about the death of your sister, totally. I think you were 8 years old. Yeah. What do you feel helped shape you or prepare you for what you are about to leap into with your life?
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I didn't realize this till much later when I was asked a similar question and I was kind of analyzing my life. So when I was 7 years old, I had a 6-year-old sister, right? She was a year and a half younger, Haley. And then I had another sister that was born, and Amory. And Amory was born with a very rare medical condition. It's a form of dwarfism. It's called, I think, like metatropic dysplasia. First time I ever actually remembered that and said it. So something's going on here.
Yeah.
But metatropic dysplasia, and so she would have never been over 4 feet tall. I think it was like her, and then it also caused her organs to be, different, enlarged.
Right.
The doctors told my mom to get an abortion. They said your daughter won't make it through pregnancy, and it's a very rare disease. Most, there's very few people that are even born with this disease. Most of them either die during labor, they die in pregnancy.
Wow.
And my mom, being who she is, said, "You're not going to tell me I'm not going to abort my daughter."
Yeah.
And so Amory was born, and she was in and out of the hospital all the time, with her health conditions. A year and a half after she was born, Saturday morning, my dad's at work. My sister Haley is at my grandma's house out of town. Just me, my mom, and Amory at home. And I woke up to my mom screaming across the hall from her bedroom, "My baby, my baby, my baby, not my baby." And as I came to, I realized, she's not, I thought she was playing with her at first. And I go, this is serious. So something's going on. I run across the hall, and my mom's giving her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, like on the bed. And she'd been breastfeeding her, and my sister's eyes just glossed over. And it was heart failure. And so I called, Mom had me, Mom, what do I do? She said, Amory's not breathing. You call 911. I call 911. My mom's giving her mouth-to-mouth, talking to me, telling me what to say. And then she says, go to the neighbor's house. He was 80 years old, and he always had this oxygen tank. She goes, tell Grant to bring over his oxygen. And we lived in the mountains, so like my property, it wasn't like walking. It was like hill, and he's dragging this giant oxygen tank on these two tires, right? And he's going as slow. Yeah. He's 80 years old, and I'm like, hurry, Grant, hurry, and so we get over there. My dad had come, or was on his way back. Ambulance was on their way. Ambulance took my mom and dad to the hospital and Amory, and I went to my parents had called a friend of the family and said, "Can Hal? We don't need Hal to go to the hospital. Can you bring him over to your house?" And I went over to the house and playing with friends, and I thought Amory's gonna be fine. I thought, that's what she's in good hands. She's in an ambulance. That's what they do. They're gonna save her. And my dad. I don't know, I was there for probably an hour playing with literally not thinking twice, just playing with the boys, thinking everything's gonna be fine, and playing with my friends. And my dad, the mom, comes out of the office and says, "Hal, your dad's on the phone." And I said, "Okay." And I went in, I talked to him, and first time I ever heard my dad cry. And he said, and by the way, he had me when he was 23, so he was 30, right, when this happened. Roughly. And he said, Amory's in heaven now. And I don't remember what I thought or even how I felt. I just know what I said next. And then I've tried to deduct what was going on for me. And what happened is, not what I said to my dad. I got off phone with my dad, and I went into the living room. And what I imagined is I was feeling a whole bunch of weird, confusing emotions. Like, wait, I'm never going to see her, right? Like, what? As anyone that loses someone, right? But especially being 8 years old, trying to figure this out. And all I know is that I said, I definitely bypassed. I said, "Hey, guys, guess where Amory is?" And I can remember, I can see the mom, Janine, looking at me and like furrowing her brow and tilting her head. I can see that. And I think my dad probably told her. And, but my friends knew nothing. And I said, "She's in heaven. Isn't that great? That's like, heaven's like supposed to be the best place." And so at that moment, I developed a superpower, if you will, right? To be able to, I didn't, I had to develop it. I didn't really develop it, but I established like, oh, wow, I don't have to feel emotional pain. If I can bypass it, right? And my parents, within a matter of, and that's the first part of the answer to your question, and here's the other. Within a matter of months, maybe 6 months later, my mom is leading a support group for other parents that have lost their children.
Wow.
Right? And so consciously, I didn't make the connection until later, but I'm like, I think that embedded in my subconscious, right, was like, oh, you take your tragedy and you serve other people with it, right? You turn it into a triumph in that way. my dad and my mom, and actually the whole family, there was this fundraiser once a year that was for the hospital that Amory was cared for throughout her 18 months that she was alive, Valley Children's Hospital in Fresno, California. And they did a newspaper fundraiser every year where the newspaper donated all the proceeds on one day of this special edition that featured the kids from the hospital, and they sold the newspaper. Well, that didn't happen in our little mountain town, but my parents, right, were like, how can we support that hospital? And so every year, me, my sister, we were out there selling newspapers all day long, right? And so I think that was it. I think it was seeing that it was learning that like you don't have to be emotionally distraught and dwell over something you can't change. Now, again, I was not accepting it. I wasn't acknowledging it. I was bypassing it, right? So it wasn't a developed superpower. It was kind of like the fringe of the superpower, right? But it did serve me for sure, right?
It kept you safe.
It kept me safe. Yeah, it was a defense mechanism, if you will. And then it allowed me, after developing that for so many decades, it was after my cancer, which we can talk about that later, but after I went through cancer, that I realized I don't know how to feel painful emotions. I literally don't know how to feel them. I've gone my entire life without feeling them. And so through plant medicine, and therapist, counselor, you name it, I was trying to figure out everything. And I finally, one night, it was like 4 a.m, and I had done some plant medicine. And
how old were you?
This was 40, so about 3 years ago. Yeah, actually, it was in 2020. I was going through the hardest time in my life. After 3 years of chemo, my brain broke. Something broke. I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't articulate. I developed anxiety for the first time in my life. I started sleeping 2 to 4 hours a night for like 6 months. And if you ever slept 2 to 4 hours in a night, it wrecks you the next day.
Yeah.
I got to the point where after a few weeks, maybe months of doing it, like around dinner time, I can picture myself at the dinner table with my wife, with Ursula and the kids, and we had company over. My cousin was in town. And I remember this happened. This was the first night it happened, but I was like, oh God, bedtime's in like 2 hours. And I had been just laying awake every night, just miserable. And it got to the point where I was so sleep deprived that I was hallucinating. I thought people were trying to kill me. I mean, it was crazy. And so I just remember, I just saw my hand. I was just shaking. Like that, I was like, it was and I was diagnosed with PTSD. So it was in the middle of all of that. That I'm going through this, and what was I talking about? Feelings. And so looking back and realize, so I do plant medicine, and my only intention, I'm like, I just want to cry. I haven't cried my entire life, really. I like literally, unless I hurt myself, I never cried. And I will say this, I did think that this was I had studied enlightenment starting after my car accident, right? And I really aspired to that. So I really thought, because really, so I think that when you reach a state of enlightenment, you are able to do what we're talking about, accept it, be at peace with it. So I thought I had achieved that level of enlightenment because, or a certain level, because I thought, oh wow, like I'm able to transcend emotional pain. And one of my counselors during that period of 2020, when I was going through the sleep deprivation, and made me realize that, Hal, I think you actually bypass. I think, and what I realized is I'm not strong. I'm not emotionally stronger than most. I'm actually weak, and I can't handle emotional pain, so I don't ever feel it, it's cool. What the problem with it is I have no empathy because I don't understand what it's like to feel emotional pain. So while I could continue this way, I like the superpower. I kind of like that I don't have to feel pain. I can't serve humanity at the highest level if I don't know what it's like to suffer. And at that point, I had if anybody told me like, I'm really struggling, I'm depressed, I would be like, dude, 5-minute rule, can't change it, turn it easy, right? Because I had never been so dark, so depressed, so scared that those things didn't work. There was no quick fix. And during that 6-month period, started November 2019, that was the first night I slept 2 hours, and then continued for 6 months until I got off chemo, which is a whole nother big pharma conversation, but which I'm happy to go into. But that morning, I just wanted to cry, and it took me a while. I was like, I couldn't cry, and I'm like, my wife's right. I'm a freaking robot. What the hell's God? How do I wait? What's it going to take? And so I started imagining my kids dying. I started imagining the worst, most painful things, and I tried to it was weird. I mean, I'm literally visualizing them dying, and me I'm like, what is it going to take? And finally the seal broke and I started bawling. And it felt so good, right? I mean, a normal person knows what a good cry can do for you. And this was like 20 years of never crying, or 30 years, right? All coming out. And I just have to tell you the funny part of the story. My wife was like, if I divorced you, if I left you, and she would say this occasionally, like, just like, you would just set your timer for 5 minutes. You wouldn't even care. And I would say, no, I would, but I literally didn't know how to. Like, I'm like, and so I'm bawling my eyes out. I'm in the guest room because at this point, I mean, my marriage is almost falling apart at this point because I'm a mess, right? My wife's like, I don't know, is this forever? Is this the new you? Is this what chemo did to you? Like, she was sensitive, but she would hit her, and she's like, this isn't who I married. Like, and it was really hard. And I was sleeping in the guest room not because we were fighting, but because if she crinkled the bed, I would wake up and I would be wide awake all night, right? So I was in the guest room. So anyway, I'm bawling my eyes out and I'm like, Ursula has to see I can cry. I'm finally crying. So imagine at like 5 a.m, your husband comes in. You've never seen him cry in your entire marriage. And I just shake her and I'm like, sweetie, and I'm bawling my eyes out. And I'm like, I'm crying. And she just thinks the kids are in danger, right?
Right.
Like, where's Sophie? Where's Howie? What's wrong? I'm like, no, they're fine. I'm crying because I'm thinking about what it would be like to lose. Anyway, so not a lot of discernment in that decision, but anyway, so that's when I really cracked it open. I think I told you a few different stories in that section, but yeah.
No, I'm happy that you went there because, again, it's really easy to look at things like Miracle Morning and feel like, okay, this is just like a quick fix to feeling better. And I believe, just through my own personal journey and the work that I've done with clients, is that there's often layers that we go to, depths that we go to within our own inner expansion, inner growth, inner maturity, and inner consciousness. And so things like the 5-minute rule, that is phenomenal for someone who just needs to learn that it's safe to feel sad, or it's safe to feel rage, or it's safe to feel anger, because you can contain it. So it works.
Yeah.
But then as you start to emotionally develop, consciously develop, you start to realize that there's more. There's more that wants to come out and be expressed, but now you've like capped yourself.
Yeah.
So how do we then get to those depths? And, plant medicine helps. And also just learning again, like how to cultivate that sense of it's okay to feel. Because at some point in our lives, we cut that connection to our emotions, whether it was for safety, security reasons, or we're told, you can't feel this, or it's bad, or told that anger is bad, but happiness is good.
Totally.
We learn these things. And so when we talk about morning rituals, when we talk about setting ourselves up for the day, when you are talking about what you're talking about, this is what I want people to realize, that there's layers to this and there's different depths to this. And they all require this continuous evolution of your emotional self, your spiritual self, to be able to go to those different depths. And, I know that even just from watching the documentary and also from witnessing you from the sidelines, cancer.
Yeah.
To be diagnosed with cancer is one thing. To be diagnosed with a somewhat more rarer form of cancer is another. And then to be diagnosed and then told you have a 20 to 30%
chance of surviving. Yeah.
At what I would say was like this peak success space of your career. Miracle Morning is going, you've got your events going, the book is selling in so many different countries. You've got this huge community of millions of people.
Yeah.
And a reminder that you are still human.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to talk about that chapter of your life, because from my perspective and when I feel into it, it feels like that really helped you go even deeper into that emotional evolution, and also the evolution of your work, which is going to which is coming out in the new rewritten book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all the things that you mentioned were true. Of course, what you didn't mention that was the hardest was I had a 7-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son, right, at the time I was diagnosed. So to be told there's only a 20 to 30% chance you're going to be alive for them, and there's a 70 to 80% chance you're going to die in the next few weeks. The cancer I was diagnosed with, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, it's very rare, very aggressive. There's only 6,000 people, I think, in the United States that, I don't know if have had it or have it now, or it's but something like that's very low. Like 1 million people have cancer, but only 6,000 with this one. And the way that it kills you is it attacks your organs shut down. And the way I found out I had it is I woke up in the middle of the night struggling to breathe, and went to the urgent care. They misdiagnosed me with pneumonia, gave me a Z-pack of antibiotics, and they said if it doesn't get better in a couple of days, go get a second opinion. Couldn't every night, I can't breathe. I'm like having to sleep sitting up, and go get a second opinion. And the doctor, so what ended up happening was I got a second opinion. They couldn't figure out what was wrong still. I had multiple doctors, and I ended up having to go to the ER, and they drained, the first time they drained 2 liters of fluid from my lung. Right? Picture a 2-liter soda bottle, right? 2 of those.
Yeah, you can watch the documentary to see. It's unreal.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and that was every other day. I'd have to go into the it would fill back up. I couldn't breathe, go into the ER, and they're draining it while they don't know what's wrong. And, we had a trip to go visit my grandma, and my, wife my wife was like, what do you need me to do? You want me to stay here and, be with you? And I go, no, my grandma is so looking forward to this. I don't want to she'll be already heartbroken that I can't go, but if you and the kids are there, that's something. And so my mom they all went to my grandma's, and then I get a call from the doctor, and he says, or the nurse or the assistant, and she says, he wants you to come in and talk to him. I go, oh, can you give me an idea what's going on? She says, he would like you to come and he'll tell you. And I'm like, oh shit. It's like, I don't know a lot, but I know that's usually bad when you have to come in. And here's the funny part. There's lots of funny parts. It's emotional roller coaster the next few years, but I go in and it was a new doctor. I just moved to Texas like a few months prior, right? This was not how we planned on our life in Texas being, of course, but just moved to Texas. So I'd only seen him like once before for like a checkup, right? And now he's got to tell me this news. And he's like beating around the bush, and he's talking in circles. And I lean in, and I said, I forgot his last name. I said, doctor. I said, I could tell whatever you're about to tell me is you're struggling to tell me. I said, I just want you to know I accept life before it happens. Meaning I've already accepted anything and everything that will ever happen to me, and I'm at peace with it. I said, you could literally tell me I'm going to die today, and I'm at peace with it. It is what it is. And he goes, okay, all right. He's like, that actually does make it a little easier to tell you. And he said, but you have cancer. Not sure at that point, you didn't know what kind. And even, I was totally thrown back. I was like, oh, well, no, like that. No, because I consider myself pretty healthy, right? And looking back, by the way, I did identify, here's all the behaviors that weren't healthy. I took a lot of workout supplements in my 20s with red dye and blue dye. I took Adderall in my 20s for a lot of it, right? I didn't sleep nearly enough. So there are all these little, all these little things that I looked at, these could have caused it. But I called Ursula. I got in the car, called her. And by the way, literally, and by the way, I don't want to dismiss the value of the 5-minute rule and acceptance, right? Which is like, I had cancer.
Right.
Now, granted, if I knew how to feel my emotions at that point, a good cry would have been in order, right? But at the same time, where you ultimately, I believe you want to get to as fast as it makes sense is a place of inner peace, right? That's the state of consciousnness that you embody. And that's the thing about emotions. Like, I believe every emotion serves a purpose. And when I was younger, I didn't. I'm like, there's negative emotions and positive, right? That was my immature view of it. But I believe every emotion serves a purpose, right? For example, if you feel anger, you look at, why am I angry? I'm angry because I did this and I shouldn't have done that. And I'm mad at myself for doing it. That's information. That's data for me to process, to go, I'm going to make a change in my life, right? But here's the thing. To me, what you would call negative emotions are only valuable until they're not. It's about extracting what is the value, what is the lesson from this. Got it. Can't change what happened, so therefore I'm not going to dwell in anger. I'm not going to dwell in depression. I'm not going to dwell in, whatever fear. I'm not going to dwell in fear. And there's a lot of different contexts that you can assess this, which one of them is health. And and I don't have any data to share, but, I think it's pretty well known that, stress is the killer, right? I mean, that causes disease. So in terms of not remaining in these negative emotional states, they literally cause dis-ease. They cause physical ailments to your body. When you're in a state of peace, your body is, that's an optimal state for your body, is that mental and emotional peace.
Well, the piece about that too is
please.
that if we stay in a prolonged state that is energetically dense, yes, can cause disease. And if we resist or bypass what our body, our mind wants to feel, that can also cause dis-ease. I think a lot of people have this picture of like, okay, I'm supposed to be high vibe, or I'm supposed to be peak performance, or I'm supposed to always be in this like peak state. And it's like, no, we have this full range of emotional capacity for a reason, and we are meant to flow through, and every day is going to look different. We're meant to expand and contract and move very fluid like. And like you discovered and what you're about to get into, pre-cancer Hal, maybe he was more in I really enjoy these peak states, and this is where I like to be, but the cancer brought you into this whole other dimension of feeling and expression. Yeah. And that's what I'm really curious about.
Yeah. Then the day I was diagnosed, and I told my parents, and all of us were like, God, come on. Like like my poor parents, like he's already been through, and we've already been through and for me, it was like, what else am I supposed to learn? Right. Like I've already gone through a near death experience. Like what am I supposed to learn? And the answer is a lot. Like right. It's what we're talking about. I mean, it's also realizing that I was a workaholic and that I was neglecting my family, and I would set my 10-minute timer to play with my son, right. And it created this anxiety, right? He's counting down like 6 minutes left, 5 minutes, right? But I'm like, I'm playing with him. I'm making time, even though I'm a really busy entrepreneur, and I could be working. I know a lot of my friends, they won't even play with their kid in the middle of their work day. At least I'm taking time, you know what I mean? But it's like almost better not to do it than have the timer and create this weird thing. And I'm so grateful for the cancer, because I would not be, well, I don't know what I'd be, but I'm the dad that my kids deserve now, because I almost lost them, and they almost lost me. And I'm the husband that my wife deserves because of that cancer journey. A couple pieces that are important, and it really actually brings the miracle morning into this. So when I was diagnosed with cancer, so we went to, my wife, Ursula, came back, and a couple things. One is, so we go to a third opinion. Like we went to the doctor that diagnosed me said, go to MD Anderson Cancer Hospital in Houston. They're the best in the world, one of the best. And go and they invented the treatment for this cancer. They invented it. So he's like, there's nowhere, but you're 3 hours away. That's where you need to go. We go there. We sit down with their oncologist, who's one of the best leukemia oncologists in the world, allegedly, right? This is all subjective, best of at what? We'll get into that. Right. But he says, Hal, so I go in and they do more testing. Turns out not only is my lung collapsing every other day, which I knew that, my heart was surrounded by a sack of fluid. Wow. And it was very close to hindering my heart from being able to beat. And it was like 1/8 of an inch thick. And they said if it got 1/8 of an inch thicker, which could happen in days, my heart would not be able to beat. And I would go into cardiac arrest. They'd have to cut my chest open, right? So
were they draining your heart too?
So they immediately, like the first, and then they also found my kidneys were failing.
Oh, wow.
But the immediate order of business was they had to get me into emergency, I don't know if you call it surgery. They had to stick a giant needle through my chest, and I had to sign consent. Okay, Hal, we're going to try to puncture that 1/8 inch thick layer, but if we go too far and puncture your heart, you will also go into cardiac arrest. We'll have to cut your chest open and perform emergency open heart surgery. So you need to sign this contract that says if we do that, we did the best we could.
Wow.
So Okay. So
The contracts in hospitals.
oh yeah. That, hey, we
We are not responsible if you
pharma
die.
and hospitals do not like liability. Which
Okay. We digress. Anyways.
And so we could have a whole
Other conversation
session about that. But and I'll touch on it a little bit here.
Please
but,
do.
Yes.
This is the podcast to do that.
Totally. And so so I get that done. Mission accomplished. Okay. All right. Heart fluids drained. Go meet with an oncologist. And I remember it vividly like it was yesterday. My wife and I are sitting there. Ursula and I are sitting there, and he says, yes, you have acute lymphoblastic leukemia. It's a 20 to 30% survival rate. If we start chemo immediately, you can start chemo immediately. Otherwise, he said you probably have 1 to 2 weeks to live. And so if you can imagine the decision, right? Okay, if I don't do chemo, I'm dead in 1 to 2 weeks. If I do chemo, you're saying I have 20 to 30% chance of not being dead in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Like, those are shitty odds, right. Right? And I always use the comparison to be like, if you went to a financial advisor and they're like, there's only a 70 to 80% chance that I'm going to lose everything you've ever worked for. Mm-hmm. Will you hire me? Right? You're like, fuck no. Right? So my wife is squeezing my hand under, right? Ursula's she's just crying and she's squeezing because we didn't hear the percentage. That was the moment we heard the percentage, right? First time we heard it. And I said, doctor, no offense. I don't want to do chemotherapy. I said, and I had watched a documentary about 8 years prior called Healing Cancer from the Inside Out. Mm-hmm. 2 DVD set. That's how old it was. It was on DVD. The first DVD was about the cancer industry and how it is, how it came to be, how they pushed out natural medicine for profit and then called everyone that did natural medicine quacks and conditioned through propaganda our society to believe that, you're the trusted big pharma doctor, right? Oh yeah, you're God, right? We trust you. So that was DVD 1, kind of opened your paradigm to, maybe the people I thought were totally trustworthy, not that they're bad people in any way. Doctors I think have great missions and great heart, right? But it's the industry, right? It's the system. It's the system that we're talking about. And then the second DVD was all about all these case studies of person after person after person, including people that were written off by doctors saying, you're stage 4, you need to go home and die. And they completely used food and different natural supplements and ozone sauna and coffee enemas and all these holistic practices to heal their cancer. And I always said, if I ever get cancer, I'm not scared. I'm going to heal it naturally. Mm-hmm. So I told the doctor, I said, I would like to heal this holistically. And I'm wondering if you can support me on that journey and not doing chemo. And he said, Hal, I can appreciate that you want to do that. He said, you don't have that luxury. You don't have a slow growing tumor that you can try to heal naturally. He said, you literally have failing organs. This cancer kills people in a matter of weeks. You're on trajectory to do that. And he said, if you don't start chemo in the next 24 hours, I don't know what to tell you. And I did not trust that. So I thought, good scare talk. I'm not going to buy your, and then of course my wife is squeezing my hand so hard, and that just makes me more angry, right? Like I'm like, he's scaring the shit out of her. And
right.
I'm going, I'm like, how dare you, threaten me and, right. Scare tactic, whatever. I said, can I have 24 hours to talk to my wife and my family and then get back to you? And he said, yes. I just wouldn't wait any longer than that. I said, okay. I went home. I researched the best holistic doctors in the country. And I called 2 of them. And one of them was Dr. Brzezinski, who is Polish. My wife is Polish. She sees that as a sign. Anyone that's Polish is just, it's meant to be, right? Like she doesn't like the UFC, but if it's a Polish fighter, she's like, I want to watch it, right? She's got Polish pride. And so we're like, it's meant to be. He was in Houston, right? And so he was Suzanne Summers' doctor that cured her cancer naturally. So anyway, call the other doctor. They both tell me your best bet is chemotherapy.
Wow.
So these are the best holistic oncologists in possibly the world saying that your doctor wasn't lying to you. Like, this cancer will kill you in the next 2 weeks. They said, we will not risk you. You need to take extreme measures. And so I got off the phone and I went, I so was resistant to chemo, as you would, I'm sure, be too, right? I'm like, I do not want to poison myself with chemo. But if the best holistic doctors in the country don't believe they can help me, what am I going to go rogue and be like, I can do it myself? I'm mentally strong. And so I'm like, I guess I got to do chemo. And so we decided to do chemo. But here's the decision I made that I would imagine 99% of cancer patients do not make. And I partly believe that me going through chemo was the best decision, even though it wrecked my body and caused a lot of long-term problems, because I believe that I can help more people that have cancer with what I'm about to share because I went through chemo than if I had done it completely holistic. Because imagine you're the average person that gets cancer and you hear Hal Elrod on a podcast, right? I'm on a podcast or I write a book about it. And you go home and go, sweetheart, look, I followed this guy, Hal Elrod. He cured his cancer naturally. I know the doctor's saying that I have to do chemo or else, and I know we trust this doctor. We've been with them for years, but I want to trust this Hal Elrod guy, right? Like the husband would be like, hell no.
Of course, yeah.
Right? So I'd have very little influence to help people in that situation. What I did is the decision I made is, okay, I basically have to do chemo. I'm going to research every holistic practice known to man. I'm going to implement every holistic practice that is available in conjunction with chemo. I'm going to do both. I'm going to, and I Googled what are the side effects of chemo. Liver toxicity was one. So I Googled what are natural supplements and natural methods to detox your liver, right? And again, this isn't what, I went and I asked my doctor in the next visit, hey, I had a list of all these things. First question, which I already knew the answer. I was testing his I was like, where's he at? Hey, doctor, what part does diet play in my healing? It doesn't matter. Diet doesn't matter as long as you do the chemo.
Of course.
And I was like, I wanted to kill. I was like, and I got so angry as I would go into the cafeteria at the hospital and see these people hooked up to their chemo tower, right? We'd drag around our towers because they'd be getting chemo I got it for 5 consecutive days, every 3 weeks, 24 hours a day. And they'd be drinking a big gulp soda, eating a burger with hormone-infested beef and white bread, eating cake and pie. And I was like, this is such bullshit. The system doesn't make money if they get better, and it doesn't, right? And it's an out and out lie to say that what you eat doesn't matter. Go eat all the sugar you want. Go eat all the processed. Right. It doesn't matter, right? So I ended up where I landed while I was doing chemo, and it was the chemo because the cancer I had was so aggressive. The chemo regimen is one of the hardest, one of the most intense that there is. I was scheduled to do, I think it was 750 hours of chemotherapy in 8 months.
Wow.
So roughly 100 hours a month.
That is a lot of chemo.
5 different drugs, each one for 24 hours for 5 consecutive days, just poisoning me, right?
Poisoning your entire body, killing the cancer and killing you.
Exactly. That's one of the nurses told me that. She was like, we had a good rapport, and she'd been a nurse for like 20 years, a cancer nurse specifically. And she goes, Hal, I'll be honest with you. She said, the method is we kill the cancer, or it is killing you while it's killing the cancer, and we just hope that it kills the cancer before it kills you, and then you can rehabilitate, live. I'm like, and so I did the chemo, and I took over 70 supplements a day. All vitamins, and they were vetted out. One thing that I want to be really clear on when it comes to the supplement industry, it's not much better than big pharma.
No, there's a lot of crap.
It's crap, right?
A lot of fillers.
And
I'll
give you, and here's, I want to give a really easy way for people to discern whether or not they should take the supplements that are the average, right? It's like 99% of supplement companies are crap. They're chemicals, they're artificial, and there's probably more harm they're doing to your body than good. Okay. Here's an easy way to figure it out. Look at how they make their vitamin C, right? And the only vitamin C supplement you should be taking is one that comes from foods that are high in vitamin C, whole food supplements. Again, 99+% of supplements use ascorbic acid as vitamin C. Most ascorbic acid is made in China. They use formaldehyde in part of the dilution process. It is not vitamin C. It mimics the molecular structure of vitamin C, but it's not vitamin C, right? And so that's how immediately when I go by supplement companies usually. I'll give you a couple of, Pure Synergy is a really good one you can get on Amazon. You familiar? My favorite is, the website is HerbDoc, HerbDoc, herbdoc.com. It's Dr. Scholl's. And by the way, here's how you know with a multivitamin as well. If your multivitamin is one capsule and it has
everything in
40 different vitamins in it, I want you to use some common sense and think, how much of each vitamin could possibly be in that capsule?
Packed into
one vitamin. So Dr. Scholl's, that their multivitamin is made from superfood that's just compacted, and it's 15 vitamins. You have to eat 15 capsules for one serving, right? that alone goes, oh, and it's all either organic or wild harvested. So, but vitamin C is how I discern when I'm looking at a vitamin company. I immediately Google that company or Amazon search that company and vitamin C, and I look. If it's ascorbic acid, I will not buy from that company. Yeah. If it's acerola cherry and camu, right, which are these high concentrate vitamin C foods, and you have to take at least 3 capsules just for your vitamin C. I'm like, okay, and it's organic. I'll buy from that company, right? So I'm taking 70 supplements a day. I started using ozone sauna.
I'm getting ozone saunas.
Yeah. I'm getting lymphatic massage, as we talked about earlier. And I want to say that the biggest thing, I was doing coffee enemas. And coffee enemas, essentially what it does, and I'm not a doctor, but it is, and a lot's been put out there to put all these natural practices down and say they're quackery and they don't work and all of that. But coffee enema, essentially, it stimulates bile production in your liver. I mentioned that chemo causes liver toxicity, which then leaks into your blood and your organs and everything else, right? So your liver is your filter. And if you can detox your liver from the chemo, you're going to heal and you're going to not have those side effects nearly as much, right? So I'm taking milk thistle as a supplement, right? Organic milk thistle seed, and doing 3 coffee enemas a week to release that bile and detoxify my liver. The doctors were amazed, once again, kind of like the walking again thing, how quickly I healed. I kept wanting to get off chemo, but they kept saying, like, you need to do all 8 cycles because there are remnants of cancer that could be hiding in your body. Nobody could tell me otherwise. It was such a, I kept trying to, can I get off now? Can I get off now? Can I get off now? I ended up only doing 7 of the 8 cycles because my body was so weak. I started out at 167 pounds. Within 3 weeks, I weighed 127 pounds.
Wow.
Lost 40 pounds. Of course, every hair on my body, I was bald. I looked sickly. My teeth were yellow. I mean, it was not fun. But for anyone listening, again, the point is this: your doctors, unless you are lucky and you get a rare doctor that actually is a holistic, oncologist. From my experience, and I've seen multiple oncologists, I always ask them the same questions. What about this? How about food? How about coffee enemas? How about, they don't know anything about it. That's not what they trained. They were trained in prescribing drugs, and that is about it. And so my point is, do your own research. Do not give up your life to your doctors. You need to take 100% responsibility for your life, for your health. And this goes with financial advisors, for your financial situation, right? You got to learn, you got to research, you got to take it into your own hands. And so if you're going to do chemo, I get it, but please research and do every holistic practice that's available. And I'll just share one resource that my hub to learn that was a website, Chris, C-H-R-I-S, chrisbeatcancer.com. Guy named Chris Work. He had stage 4 cancer. They said, if you don't do chemo, you're going to be dead in a few months. He said, I'm not doing chemo. I'm curing this naturally. He's been alive for 10 years, and his life is dedicated to interviewing holistic doctors and sharing what they do and what he did with millions of people. And he literally has an audience of millions of people now. But Chris Beat Cancer was like my hub, because I'm like, okay, he's done all the research. Rather than me shotgun approach, I'm going to look at him and I'm going to listen to his interviews. I'm going to read his recipes on and on and on. And by the way, he did say from the doctors he's interviewed and his experience that coffee enemas were arguably, if he had to pick one holistic practice, that was the single most effective practice to heal from cancer and prevent cancer, because the toxins in our food and our supplements and they get stored in the liver and then it leaks out and they form cancer. And he said, if you can keep detoxing your liver, then you are much less likely to get cancer. So I did 3 coffee enemas a week when I had cancer, and now I do there every Saturday, Sunday, and I love them now. The first one I did was super uncomfortable, super awkward, but now it's like a meditation. I love it. Every Saturday and Sunday, it's one of my favorite parts of my weekend, other than hanging out with the family, is I go in my bathroom floor, I lay on this comfortable quilt, and I do my 15-minute coffee enema, and I just meditate. And actually, I use it as an opportunity. It's an anchor. I just imagine all of my cells being completely healed. I pray, I meditate, I visualize living to be 100 years old with my family, and so it's a beautiful, So coffee enemas went from being really uncomfortable to favorite part of my week. Yeah.
So we just went from cancer to chemo to holistic to coffee enemas.
Coffee enemas.
Coffee in your butt.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
Yeah.
I fully support holistic approaches in anything. And I also am a firm believer that we are 100% responsible. We can't stop what happens to us. We don't have control over other people's behaviors or actions and how they impact us. However, we do have control over the here and now and the us.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a huge backbone of Miracle Morning. It's almost like the foundational underlying unsaid principle is like, okay, your life might feel like shit right now, but here's something you can do, and you have control over this. I want to go back into the part about learning to feel.
Okay.
And learning to really feel the depths of your emotions, because I'm going to tell you, like, I watched your documentary, and again, like, I know your story, I know you, but you share a lot in the Miracle Morning movie, and a lot of pieces of you and your life that I think aren't as front facing and public. And there were these parts that you were talking in the hospital about, like, I'm doing my Miracle Morning practice every day. You have clips of you with your dad making juice. Like, you're doing all these things that you have control over. But then there's these really real moments of, and I accept that this is a possibility.
Yeah.
And for so many people, it's hard to hold on to both.
Yeah.
You know, the accepting of what is, no matter how horrific, because it's horrific, and the possibility of what could be. But the possibility of what could be is also like this thing that you don't have full control over, but you can be responsible for this piece.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that it's going to get you exactly where you want to go, but I can do this.
Yeah.
It's so hard for people to hold both. And I want to hear more about how you danced in those two spaces of, like, the reality of what is, hooked into a chemo machine, 20 to 30% chance of living, and, well, I'm going to take responsibility for what I can take responsibility for. It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will, the Miracle Morning, I doubled down on it during cancer. And I created the Miracle Morning in 2008 when I had, the economy crashed. I lost over half my income. And I think it's important to talk about because right now we're arguably in the next recession,
similar.
Right? Yeah. Which could be worse. Mm-hmm. Might be the same, similar.
Might be planned.
Yeah.
I don't know.
She said the quiet part out loud. Yeah. Might be planned. Yeah. Oh yeah. We are 100% on the same page. But anyway, so moving on to the Miracle Morning, I started it when I was at rock bottom financially. And you mentioned it, like the book being organic, like it wasn't a book idea. It wasn't like, ooh, what's a hot topic? Morning routine.
Let me just put together this formula.
Totally. It was literally like 100% organic. And this is, this is tying in the Miracle Morning to how I did what you're asking me. But the economy crashed and I crashed with it, and I lost over half of my income, and my house was foreclosed on, and I was drowning in debt, drowning in hopelessness, because I was like sinking. Like, I kept losing client after client after client when I already couldn't pay the mortgage. And it was like, and then nothing I was doing to try to get more clients was working. And I just was seeing nothing but like hopelessness. And a series of events led me to a Jim Rohn quote. And this one quote changed everything. It was the catalyst for the Miracle Morning. He said, "Your level of success and fulfillment in every area of your life will never exceed your level of personal development." And I had probably heard it before, as some people listening might have, but here's how it landed for me. I kind of quantified it. I went, oh, wait a minute. What does he mean by that? If I'm measuring my level of success and fulfillment in any area of my life, I want level 10. We all do, right? It's like you want your life to be as good as it can be. You want to be as healthy as you can be and wealthy as you can be. You want your marriage to be as thriving as it can be. You want to have as much energy as you can, right? Like, if you're measuring on a scale of 1 to 10, if I was a genie, I was like, hey, what do you want in terms of this or that? You go, dude, I want level 10. Like, I want to be as happy as I could be, right? And, and then I asked myself, okay, well, if my level of success and fulfillment will never exceed my level of personal development. What's my level of personal development? I want level 10 success and fulfillment. And at that time, and I think this is the disconnect for like most of our society. I went, my level of personal development is like at a 2 or a 3. And let me kind of define that. If you're like, well, what does that mean? If someone's listening, like, what is personal development? How do you define that? To me, it's who you are as a person, who you've developed yourself to be or are developing yourself to be. So it's your beliefs. It's your overall mindset, right? It's your confidence level. It's your habits, right? Where are those, right? So if you want level 10 health, well, your level of personal development would be like, how are you learning? What are you learning about? What are you applying?
It's also like the relationship with self, right? Like we talk so much about relationships with other people, with our businesses, with our success, but it's like the real root of personal development, spiritual development, inner work, deep work, that's all done from a relationship, cultivating that relationship to self, deepening that relationship to self, getting to know who you are beyond the societal paradigms, the values that were that you were subjected to, and really uncovering who you
actually are.
Underneath all
which
of it.
most of us are just an assortment of all the right.
We're just clones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you were pieces of our parents, and why do you believe the religion you believe? Because my mom and dad,
exactly.
right? Or why are you political party you are? Well, because, right? Like it's like, have you ever thought on your own, right? Maybe there's, anyway, so I don't know if this is appropriate, but it came through me just now. So the other day, this came through me when I was taking notes, and it was, remember where we were because we get back, but I was thinking about politics, and I was thinking about like, if someone's like, Biden's the right guy or Trump's the right guy or whatever. I was like, that's like arguing like what's better for you, like Burger King or McDonald's.
Exactly.
Right? Neither have your best interest in mind. Right? As corporations and as entity, they are all looking out for what's best for them. There's financial interest, right? So it's like it's like paradigm shift of like, if you're arguing who's better,
right,
you need to back up and get a little more meta with that.
And that's why it's like again, personal responsibility, sovereignty, relationship with self. This is where it begins.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. So 2008. So my level of personal development is at like a 2 or a 3.
Right.
And imagine the disconnect, right? If you just, when I'm speaking, I'll put one hand up top, right? This is level 10 success up here. Here's my level of personal development, level 2 down here. And that's the disconnect. This is what I want, but this is who I am and what I'm capable of creating and sustaining in my life. Right. And so the epiphany was, I've got to go research what the world's most successful people do for personal development. And I need to do that. And I went home and I just Googled, best personal development practices. What do millionaires do for personal growth and development? Right on. And I'm looking for like I'm like, well, I got to figure out the best one and do that. And I have a list of 6 practices, right? And none of them were new, which you kind of mentioned earlier. And a lot of them had a bad rap. Like affirmations had a bad rap. Like I am I
am delusional.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, And then also did you ever watch Stuart Smalley on Saturday Night Live?
Yes.
Right? I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. So like my idea of affirmations were goofy.
Yeah.
But I've got this list of 6 practices, and they were all very compelling the way that I came upon them. Like, for example, I read an article called Fortune 500 CEOs Who Swear by Meditation. And at that point in my life, I was probably mid-20s, I always thought meditation was like woo-woo. Like I pictured a monk in a monastery. But these CEOs are like, this is how we got our best ideas to grow the company, right? Make money. And I'm like, at that point, I'm just struggling financially. So I'm like, I got to meditate. And then I saw an interview with Will Smith pre-Chris Rock slap, right? His name has a different effect on people when you say it now. But this was when Will Smith was the man, right? And Ellen DeGeneres was interviewing him and said, hey, how everything you touch, you're a successful TV star, you're a successful movie star, you're a successful musician. How'd you become so successful growing up in middle-class family in Philly? And he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said, I learned affirmations when I was 15 years old. And he said, I wrote affirmations in a very specific way where I affirmed what I wanted in my life. Then I affirmed who I needed to be and what I needed to do to move toward that. And he said, I read those affirmations every day and I just lived in alignment with them. I literally became them. And then what do you know? I ended up where I affirmed I was going to end up by becoming the person I needed to be to get there, right? And the way he described it, I'm like, this is just what Jim Rohn said. Your level of success will not exceed your level of personal development, who you become, right? And so I'm like, I got to do affirmations.
By the way, his book, Did you read it? Did you read it?
No, and I bought it on Audible. I heard it's amazing.
Do the Audible.
I heard it's amazing.
So good.
I've heard John Vroman said it's like the best.
So good.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm excited to listen to it now.
Yeah.
On the way back home, I'm going to listen to it. So I'm looking at these 6 practices, and I'm trying to compete with which one's better. And the other struggle I was dealing with is none of these are new.
Right.
And we've been conditioned as a society that we need the new program. That's how marketers work, right? Like they rename something, they repackage something, which arguably, that's what I did with the Miracle Morning. At least, kind of repackaging, but it's deeper than that. And I think you get that. We'll talk about it. But so ultimately, I'm looking at the 6 and I go, which one's the best? I don't know. And I remember sitting on my couch with my computer on the coffee table, and I'm literally like, screw it, this is not going to, never mind. And then thank God, I think it was the voice of God, right? Like literally thank God. It was like, Hal, what if instead of picking one of these, what if you did all 6 of them tomorrow? Mm-hmm. What if you woke up an hour earlier and you just allocated 10 minutes for each of the 6? And I went, dude, that would be the ultimate personal development ritual. That would be literally the 6 most timeless, proven personal development practices that the world's most successful people across all walks of life have sworn by for centuries. Oh my God, and I got excited. And keep in mind, I was depressed at that point. Mm-hmm. And there's levels of depression too. I want to be sensitive to that, because when I was depressed in 2020 after that sleeplessness, I was suicidal depressed. I was trying to plan my death and see if I could not hurt my kids and kill myself. I was not that depressed in 2008.
But at the same time, in 2008, that was like the most depressed you ever experienced. So you didn't have the other reference.
It's very true. Yeah, thank you. Great point. Yeah, no, it was. I thought about killing myself in 2008. I remember I just wanted to end. And I realized that too, people that are suicidal, I've been suicidal, right? You don't actually want to die. You just don't want to feel the way you're feeling anymore. Exactly. Right? That's it. That's literally it, and you don't see another way. And here's what's powerful about the Miracle Morning so that night I feel like a kid on Christmas Eve, right? I was so excited. I wasn't depressed. Every night up until that point for 6 months, it was like every night, like that was my only escape, was like, I get to sleep for 8 hours. Mm-hmm. Oh God, I got to wake up and do it again tomorrow. And I'd wait till the last minute to wake up. I'd snooze 3 times. That night I go to bed excited. Alarm goes off. It was one of those, when you are excited to wake up, like it's almost like what opens first, what goes off first? Do your eyes open or the alarm? It's almost like you're like alarms, they open like right before it, right? And so I wake up, I'm excited. I go in the living room. The night before I had Googled, because I didn't really know how to do any of these things. I had Googled how to meditate. I had 6 tabs open, how to do visualization, how to do affirmations, how to journal, right? Like I had the whole thing open. And I go through and I'm like, 5 minutes for each of the 10 is spent reading, and then 5 minutes actually meditating, and then 5 minutes reading, and 5 minutes doing affirmations. So it was like a really subpar morning routine. Right. But at the end of it, for the first time in 6 months, I had hope. Mm-hmm. I went, if Jim Rohn's right, I think he's right. If I start every day like this with this much clarity and energy and learning something new and applying it, it's only a matter of time before I go from being a level 2 version of myself, to a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's inevitable. If I continue to get better every single day and I don't stop, how could I not become the person that I need to be to turn my life around? Mm-hmm. And so now I was thinking it would take a year, because I thought the compound effect, 1% better every day. Yeah. And Ruby, in less than 2 months, and I want to share this, I want to highlight, this was in the height of the 2008 recession. Mm-hmm. This was when the economy was getting worse and worse and worse. But I was getting better and better and better. And in less than 2 months, I more than doubled my income, even though the economy got worse. I went from being in the worst shape of my life physically. I had canceled my gym membership 6 months before when the money was bad. I was doing nothing. I was in desperation mode. My body fat percentage had tripled in those 6 months, from 5.7% to 17%. And I was depressed. In less than 2 months, I doubled my income. I went from being in the worst shape of my life physically to committing to run a 52-mile ultra marathon, because, and this is an interesting distinction, I hated running. Mm-hmm. And when I was assessing what does a level 10 look like in every area of my life, right? I was like, physically, if I've never run more than a mile, and that was only when it was required in PE class. If I could run 52 miles in one day, I was like, I don't know what that's like, but I'm just going to commit to it publicly, and I'm going to commit to a charity. Like I'm going to make it so public that I can't back out or I look like a total jerk, mm-hmm. like a total labor. And so I committed to that, started training for it. And my depression, it didn't take 2 months to go away. it started going away on day one, because hopelessness is one of the biggest causes of depression. When you lose hope, I was like, I'm hopeful every day. I'm more hopeful. I'm more hopeful. I'm more hopeful. And here's how the book got titled. It wasn't called The Miracle Morning. I went to my wife. I can remember the moment. She's coming out of the bedroom. I'm going in, I'm down the hall, and we meet, and I go, sweetie, I just signed up another coaching client. She's like, oh, congratulations. And I'm like, that's 2 clients today. I said, we've officially doubled our income in the last 2 months, all because of this morning routine. It feels like a freaking miracle. And she goes, it's your miracle morning. I go, I love that. I like alliteration.
Ursula, she's so smart.
She's the muse. She also, we might get to that. She named the savers too.
I love that story. Yeah.
And so I'm like, I love that. So in my schedule, up until that point, every day, it was just personal development at 5 a.m. That's all, right? And I the next day I crossed it up, miracle morning, miracle morning, miracle morning. A couple weeks later, my coaching client, Katie, she said, Hal, I keep reading about morning routines. Do you have a morning routine? And I'm just like, chomping it. I'm like, oh my God, yes, I'm doing this thing. I call it the miracle morning. It's the 6-pack practice, right? I'm like, and she's like, okay, I'm going to try it. And so she comes back 2 weeks later and she's like, Hal, oh my gosh, I had the best 2 weeks in my sales career. I started reading again. I started running again. I've never been a morning person my entire life. I think I'm a morning person. And then I'm like, I got to tell the rest of my clients. So I tell all my, I had 14 clients at that time. I tell all 14 of them. 13 out of the 14 came back to the next call saying, like Katie, oh my gosh, it works. I'm doing it. I'm waking up. I did what you said. I moved the alarm clock across. I gave them some logistical tips on how to beat that snooze button. And that's when I went, wait a minute. If this miracle morning changed my life in 2 months, in the middle of the recession, and I'm not a morning person, it did it for Katie. It's doing it for all my clients. This could change the world. Like this could change anybody's life. I have a responsibility to share this. And that's when I started writing The Miracle Morning.
Right.
And, 3 years later, it was self-published and this and that. So that's how the practice started. And then any questions on that? And then I want to fast forward to cancer and
let's fast forward to cancer. Of course, everyone listening and watching, if you have yet to read Miracle Morning, just grab a copy. Okay. The link is in the show notes. Watch the documentary. The link is in the show notes.
Yeah. And if I can say miraclemorning.com, we just redid the homepage. The documentary is like right there. Yeah. The app is free. The movie, the books
and
are there.
And then you can even see like in the community how many people have, you can literally read real life experiences. So that, and now let's fast forward to the cancer and how you're able to hold both the two polarities of like what it is that you're going through.
Yeah. So for me, the practice of the Miracle Morning that I believe is the most effective, and it's the one I was most skeptical about when I started, is affirmations. But sometimes I get asked like, do you have a favorite of the savers? And I don't think we covered real quick. Silence. So meditation became silence. This was my wife's idea, which
I like better because even like
breath work.
Right, whatever, prayer.
Yep.
Because meditation for people, especially with anxiety, meditation can actually create more anxiety.
Totally.
Whereas like breath work or prayer, speaking to God, whatever it is, like that can actually help.
Yeah. And guided meditations always my tip.
Guided are great. Yeah.
Right. Because if you're like my mom, even she's amazing, but she's like, I've tried meditating. I can't do it. Right. Yeah. I'm like, Mom, you can. But I'm like, have you ever done a guided meditation? This was literally the other day. She's like, no. And I was like, start there. Have someone, you literally no anxiety. They will guide you. Right. So, silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing, which was originally journaling. So thanks to my wife's help, she's like, you should get a thesaurus and find other words. You can make an acronym so people remember it. I'm like, brilliant. So meditation became silence, journaling became scribing. So affirmations, people ask me like, do you have a favorite of the savers? And like the politically correct answer would be like, no, they're all equally important. That may be true. And I've surveyed our community. Some people are like, my favorite's visualization, my favorite's journaling, my favorite, whatever. But affirmations, here's why they're my favorite. For me, I'm very a practical, results-oriented person. And I think you alluded to that a little bit earlier with like these practices. Some people might go like, dude, come on, woo-woo, meditation, affirmations are phony,
or
blah,
people
blah,
just
blah.
like tell you, like, go meditate, like this will change your life. But then they're okay. And what do you mean? I don't know what to do from here. And I actually don't feel better. And there's just no context. Yeah. And there's no relatability.
Yeah.
And I feel what you bring is the context and the relatability.
I've realized that's my I don't know, if I have like a skill, it's taking complex, esoteric, hard to grasp concepts and then making them super practical and actionable. And I realized that when I was in Cutco in sales, I was really good at getting referrals. My manager's like, how are you doing this? And like I told him over the phone, like, well, I do this, then this. And he's like, dude, can you put that in? I made like a 1-page handout,
Right.
taught it to our people, and then boom, 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 everybody's getting the same results. So anyway, so with the savers, right, it's like affirmations. Here's the way I teach them. It's actually, Will Smith gets a lot of credit because I kind of took what he shared them in a slightly different way. And but for me, you literally in writing articulate the blueprint for what you want, what you're committed to, why it's a must for you, and what you're going to do to achieve it. And then it's just a matter of affirming that every day, iterating as needed, right? If you learn something new that you want to apply or you make a change. But here's the 3 steps. So I might as well give, if you're listening right now, these are the 3 steps that I apply to affirmations. And this is how I maintain both those ideas, is in writing. It's very hard to maintain an idea, especially if it's a new idea or a new paradigm or a new concept in your head, floating around, bouncing around with all your old beliefs, your limiting beliefs, the old paradigm, like that. It's nearly impossible, right? The only way to elevate your consciousness is through daily or at least consistent conditioning. Right? So if you want to elevate your consciousness, you want to see the world in a better way, you want to be happier, you want to be more peaceful, you've got to articulate it in writing and read it every single day. And I'll give you the 3 steps on how to articulate in writing. And consistently, you are reprogramming your neural pathways to think, feel, see things in a different light. And one day you'll look back and go, kind of like the 5-minute rule. On day 1, it was like, no way, dude. My paradigm says it takes me a lot longer than 5 minutes, usually 5 hours or 5 days to get over something. Within 2 weeks of doing it, I could get over it in 5 seconds. Like, and if you're listening, I want you to think about how profound that difference is. And anything you're listening right now, biggest one is, I'm not a morning person, Hal. Like, I don't think I could do this. Not for me. Once I surveyed, somebody asked me on an interview, what percentage of the Miracle Morning community were already morning people? So this was easy, right? They just were like, instead of checking email, I'll do the savers. And he said, what percentage were like, I've never been a morning person in my life. And they actually overcame it, and now they do the Miracle Morning every day. I was like, God, that's such a good question. I should know that. So I surveyed our community, which at the time was probably like in the 100. It wasn't millions, but hundreds of thousands of people. It was significant, and 72% of people said they never thought they could be a morning person until they read the Miracle Morning, and now they do it 5, 6, 7 days a week, right? So here's the 3 steps for affirmations. Step 1, affirm what you're committed to. So, and I'm going to tell you what my cancer affirmation said. Affirm what you're committed to. In life, we don't get what we want just because we want it. We all want to be wealthy and healthy and happy, right? You get what you're committed to, period, right? That's it. Either you're committed or you're not. And when every day you affirm, I am committed to blank, no matter what, there is no other option. And if you're listening right now and you're taking notes, that is the template that I use in my affirmations. I am committed to blank, and blank, insert the activity, the habit, the daily, right? I'm committed to the Miracle Morning every day. Insert the outcome. I'm committed to, like for me, when I wrote the Miracle Morning, I'm committed to change 1 million lives one morning at a time for as long as it takes. And I tried to do it in a year. It took me 6, right? But whatever. I was committed. And if I wasn't committed, after 1 year of giving it everything I had, I only sold 13,000 copies. I was 98.7% short of my goal. If I wasn't affirming that I was committed to do everything in my power, no matter what, there's another option, I would have given up. Like, don't miss that, everybody. Like, that seems overly simple.
Yeah.
Like, so wait, you just write down that you're committed to something? Yeah. And then you read it every day with conviction. And then you actually live in alignment with that affirmation. And then all of a sudden, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And you actually go from saying you're committed, but not feeling it on day 1 to kind of in the middle. You're like, I'm kind of committed. Like, I'm doing the things. Right? And then all of a sudden, after a month or so, you're fully committed. It's every fiber of your being, and it's unconscious. You don't even think about it. That power of just step 1. I'll go through the steps, and then I'll run my cancer through them. Step 2, affirm why it's a must for you. And use language that resonates with you. So instead of why it's a must for you, maybe it means more to you to affirm why it's deeply meaningful for you. right?
Why it's important.
Why, right? You use words that work for you, right? But why it's important to you, right? Why is it a must? Simon Sinek, made that popular, that start with why. We do what we have to have the why. That's what will fuel the what. I'm committed to this. But if you don't know why, I'm committed to becoming a millionaire, right?
Why?
It's like, because then I could buy stuff, and that's not going to drive you.
Right.
When you hit roadblocks and obstacles, you're going to be like, I don't need $1 million. I'm doing pretty good, right? But if you're like, I'm committed to be a millionaire so I can donate $500,000 to charity or $100,000 to charity and give my wife, let her stop working, and so she can take care of our kids full time, so we're not so stressed over money all the time, so that I can provide financial freedom for, right? Dude, that's what's going to get you to follow through with that commitment. But without that what? It's hollow. It is shallow, and you're probably not going to follow through.
Yeah.
Step 3, affirm which specific actions you'll take and when. Right? And this is simple, right? This isn't rocket science. It's like, okay, so from what I'm committed to, that's not hard. From why it's a must for me, that's not hard. And then from which actions I'll take and when, that's not hard. But let me ask you a question. When was the last time you affirmed those things every single day with conviction, and then looked at your schedule to ensure that you were living in alignment with what you just affirmed? I would imagine for most people, it's like, I've never done that.
Right.
Right. And that's where I love John Vroman said this recently, and I think he got it from somebody else. I mentioned that in our society, we're always looking for something new. That's a new program. That's a new this, that's a new that. And and John said something along the lines of, it's not about finding something new. It's about discovering or remembering something true.
I love that.
Right. And that's what the savers are. None of them are new.
Right.
But they've been true for decades, centuries.
They've worked
for people.
For a reason.
Worked. Yeah, exactly.
It's just about, again, language is so interesting, and the way that things are described and portrayed now with social media, is it can often come across as delusional. It's empty. It's lacking depth. There's something missing. It's like when you're scrolling through your feed and you see someone and they're always posting the same kind of shit. You're like, something's a little off here. You don't trust it.
Yeah.
And again, this is why I feel Miracle Morning works. Because even I was like, this sounds kind of hokey.
Totally.
And then I read it and I was like, okay, there's something to this.
Yeah.
And it's people need to remember that their time is sacred, and to use that time wisely to cultivate a relationship with yourself before you go out and do all these relationships with others.
Yeah.
And I think that when what you offer is a structure to be able to do that. And I think that that's what people often miss is I just need something to follow.
Yeah.
But this isn't a to-do list that you just check off. It's something to actually sit with, to be with. And that's what actually makes it the miracle.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're just doing your morning rituals to check things off, which I'll have lots of clients who go through that and I didn't do my morning rituals today. And I'm like, are you feeling disappointed because you didn't check it off a list?
Yeah.
Or are you actually feeling the depletion?
Yeah.
And it's usually the disappointment from not checking it off a list.
Yeah.
It's you're not actually being present with the morning rituals that you're creating.
Yeah.
And that's
the impact it's having on you.
Are you noticing what it's changing in you? What you're describing with the affirmations. Are you noticing how it's actually helping you create a deeper sense of commitment? Maybe at the beginning you weren't committed, but now you're starting to feel the commitment coming through. Because even just say it's I am committed to, you want to commit yourself to a gym routine, but then you start off by just saying it. You're committing yourself to saying it.
Yeah.
You just start to... It's you're greasing the wheels.
Yeah.
And
you're acclimating.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's really important, because I think people always want to jump head first, and then it doesn't last.
Yeah.
But when you offer yourself the space to acclimate in that way, it really works. So cancer.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I had cancer initially, I was at peace with it. I accepted it. Doesn't mean I wasn't scared I was going to die. I was terrified I was going to die.
And that's the part that people need to understand.
Yeah.
You know, like you can, as you just said, I was at peace
I was
with it.
peaceful with what I can't change,
Right.
and also scared I was going to
die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fear, what's interesting is, to be really transparent, I wasn't afraid of dying. I made peace with death a long time ago. And I just, since we're mentioning that, I just want to say for anybody listening, if death is a fear of yours, I want to ask you, were you afraid of being born? And the answer is, doesn't make sense. Of course I wasn't afraid of being born. Number one, I didn't even know. Well, maybe you knew, but you think you didn't know. But why would I? Of course I'm afraid of being born. Then why would you be afraid of dying? Because dying is an inevitability. And it makes, to me, not a lot of sense to be afraid of inevitabilities. It makes a lot more sense to be at peace with inevitabilities. And death is just the other side of birth. And of course, you know, most of us don't know what actually is on the other side. I love what Michael Singer in his new book, he said, you know, everyone's afraid of death. He goes, I'm excited. He goes, I'm excited, like, because here's the thing. When I die, either nothing happens and it's black forever, but I don't know, so who cares? Like, I'm not sitting there going, oh, I wish something was happening. He's like, I won't exist anymore. So that might be the case. He's like, or something does exist, and I get to find out what it is. He's like, right. That's the most exciting thing ever in life is you die and you see what happens. You know, like, I love that mindset, right? But anyway, so I was scared I was going to die for sure. And especially when I learned Wayne Dyer, who I'm a big fan of, and I've read his books. I met him once in person and I learned from him. And then I found out that he died of leukemia. And I consider Wayne Dyer to be far more evolved than I was, or than I am, you know, right? I mean, he was, 70 when I met him, and I was probably 25. And anyway, so I'm going, wait a minute. If Wayne couldn't beat leukemia with all his positive mindset and meditation and affirmations, oh crap, how am I going to do it? Right? So, I mean, that like really exacerbated the fear. And here's what happened. That fear did not last very long. It went away within a matter of, I'd say, weeks. And the reason it went away is my miracle morning, and particularly my affirmations. So the first thing I affirmed was, I'm committed to beating cancer and living to be 100 plus years old alongside Ursula and the kids. No matter what, there is no other option. Remember that. I'm committed to blank. No matter what, there's no other option. For me, it was living to be 100 alongside Ursula and the kids. No matter what, there's no other option. I read that every day with such conviction that it became my reality. It became my belief. It became the only option, because I literally affirmed that it was the only option. You know, and that's a whole other discussion that we won't go into. But right, your subconscious doesn't know the difference between reality and vividly imagined reality. That's why when you have a nightmare and you wake up in the morning, you literally, your heart's racing, like literally, think about that. Your body is reacting to an illusion of you sleeping. So if you want to heal your body, might it react to your visualizations and your affirmations and your meditate, right? It's just something to think about, you know?
But you have to, this is the thing, what you said about the conviction. You can't just read words off a piece of paper. You have to read them until you actually feel them in your body. I used to do those, my 3-day event in LA a lot, and I used to call it incantations, and because I like it's like a little spell you put over yourself, and I would get people to do it, but I would get them to like get up and like say this however loudly or softly that you need to do it until you actually feel something shifting in your body. That's when you know. Because if you're just reading an affirmation, just reading a mantra in the mirror, but you're not actually dropping into the feeling, that's not what we're talking about here. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's next to nothing, right? When if all you do is recite it, you know, blah, 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 blah. You know, Tony Robbins teaches, like, when the incantations, he always throws a power move in there, right? Like, move your body, right? I am powerful. I am it, right? You know, like, but it's true, right? You're mixing that physiology. And that for me is my hand is on my heart typically when I'm reading something. And I do remember I would read it with like intense conviction. Like sometimes I'd yell it if nobody was around, right? I'm committed to beating cancer and living to be 100 plus years old alongside Ursula and the kids. No matter what, there is no other option. Let me say that again, right? I would just like keep going, right? You know, preach it, right? Like that'd be that kind of energy. Number 2, and this is where the rubber meets the road, I feel like, well, or number 3, but number 2 was really where, you know, you get that fuel to follow the commitment. I went, I had bullet points. I encourage you, when you are affirming step 2, which is affirm why it's a must for you or why it's important, why it's meaningful. If you have more than one reason, that's great. I also believe in quality over quantity. I don't like the self-help people that are like, dude, go write 100 reasons why you're going to achieve your goal.
Right.
Like, dude, it's diluted reasons. Like,
how about just one really good, solid reason?
Well, exactly. It could be one really good for your family, right?
Yeah.
But so here were mine, and they all could be. They could have all been one, but I felt like these specific and breaking them up was important. I'm committed to beating cancer for Ursula because I promised her forever and a day. I'm committed to beating cancer for Sophia and Halston because they deserve their dad's love, leadership, and guidance. I'm committed to beating cancer for my mom because she doesn't deserve to lose another child. I'm committed to beating cancer for my dad because he gave up everything to save me. I'm committed to beating cancer for myself because, damn it, I deserve to live a long, happy, healthy life. And last but not least, I'm committed to beating cancer for the millions of people who are themselves battling cancer or some other disease and may not have been blessed with the knowledge and resources that I have and can benefit from me beating this and then inspiring and empowering them to do the same. That is what I was willing to do, whatever it took, for those reasons, right? And then the third step is to beat cancer, I will ... Number 1, I will do everything. I will follow Western medicine, and I will maintain unwavering faith that it is healing my body. If I didn't have that affirmation, I would be living in a state of doubt that this is poisoning my body. This is possibly doing more damage. I might die from the chemo.
Right.
Like, the power of controlling your mind is invaluable. It's immeasurable, right? And so I then affirmed I will also, in combination with chemo, to detox my body and support it, my immune system, I will do every holistic practice that I can find. And I had a list of, all the things I listed earlier: ozone sauna, coffee enemas, 70 supplements, juicing, cleansing, on and on and on and on and on. Researching, reading, all of these things. When I mentioned that when I first had cancer, I was afraid. I was afraid that I was going to die. After reciting that affirmation, those 3 steps, that formula, which was about a page long. I mean, it was like a full Word, Microsoft Word printed off page. It was printed by my bedside. It was in my car. It was everywhere. It was because it was my chosen reality that I was creating for myself. And I didn't have fear anymore. In fact, almost to a detriment, I didn't do anything with my will. Like, I looked back and I was like, dude, but I literally got to the point where I had replaced fear with unwavering faith, so much so that dying was not even a possibility for me at that point. But again, like, the responsible thing as the breadwinner and I should have made sure the will was it, but I'm like, no, I didn't even look at it. Like, I'm going to live, and I mean, hey, it worked, it worked. But I want to just share one point of reference. I interviewed Dr. Bernie Siegel on my podcast a couple years ago, and he is a retired cancer surgeon. He has he's done over 3,000 surgeries, and he wrote a book called Love, Medicine, and Miracles, among many others. That was one of the books I read with cancer. And in that book, he said that the one thing that every cancer patient that survived their cancer had in common, including those that survived cancers that statistically they should not have survived, right? He said they all had an unshakable will to live. While he saw many cancer patients that had survivable cancers, that no problem, they should, 80% chance you're going to live. He watched them mentally give up, emotionally give up, live in fear, and then die. And so his belief from data of 3,000 cancer patients is that the single determining factor in whether or not you live or die is your mindset. And the way that I explain that in layman's terms is that we have trillions of cells that make up our body, and they do our bidding. If we live in fear, we're sending a message that says, hey, I think we're dying. And they go, all right, I guess that's what we're doing. But if you say, I'm committed to beating cancer, I don't care what the doctors say the odds are, I create my own odds, there's no other option, then our cells are like, all right, I guess that's what we're doing.
And what's, I need to add this just from the trauma-informed perspective, is to build the resiliency to get through challenges, whether it's cancer or any other challenge in life. We need to be resourced to get through it. And that's why there are people who do get stuck in trauma states, and there are people who are able to move through it. And miracle morning is a way to resource yourself. That's just from my lens, the way I look at it. And you also had a really great community of people behind you, family who really supported you. And I'm sharing this just because I know there's some people who are going to, again, listen or watch this and be like, okay, well, that's not my situation. It's like to build resilience through traumatic situations, we need to resource. We need to have resources or resource ourselves. And so if you don't have the resources around you, if you don't have the community of people cheering you on or telling you to go for a run or like supporting you, if you don't have that, you still have the personal responsibility. And if something like Miracle Morning still feels really tough, then what if you were just to read the book and start with one? Like you can still resource yourself is what I'm saying. And it's not going to feel as easy for some people as it does for others, again, because it comes down from the trauma perspective to resourced. How well resourced is this individual to be able to get through or handle what's happening? But Miracle Morning is a resource tool. It truly is. To build resiliency. Exactly. And the beauty of it, for those who don't feel like they have community, it also has a built-in community. The Miracle Morning community is arguably the biggest benefit of writing that book. And it's so funny. It was an 11th hour thing where the book was like it was pretty much final draft, but I could still make changes. I sent it to like 5 of my friends. I'm like, hey, will you read that? And I sent it to my sister for a different perspective. And because she's not in like the self-help world, and my other friends were. And I was like, any feedback, any ideas? And my buddy John Vroman, John, Front Row Dads, he said, Hal, do you have any kind of like community, like online set up for people to like support each other? Because this is kind of a lonely thing, right? They're by themselves, up early, their family might still be in bed, like somewhere they could tap into and ask questions, share ideas. And I was like, no, I didn't even think about that. And he said, what about like a Facebook group? And I was like, okay. So I set up a free Facebook group, and now it has 349,000 people in it from hundreds of countries or 100 plus countries. But it's arguably the most supportive online community I've ever seen in my life. And somebody asked me about this yesterday. I think it was really interesting that the Miracle Morning so the mission of the Miracle Morning is to elevate human consciousness one morning at a time. It's not just a cute tagline. It's literally what it is. And it also didn't start that way. That's an observation of what was happening to members of the community, people that practice the Miracle Morning. They were elevating their consciousness. Now, what does that mean? It's a very, if you ask 100 people, what's it mean to elevate consciousness? You'd probably get 5 different answers, and 95, I don't even know what that means, right? So I'm trying to make that practical for people. And here's what it means to elevate your consciousness. It's elevating your awareness of how your thoughts, your words, and your actions impact yourself and others. That's it. As you become more aware, therefore more thoughtful, therefore more intentional about how the thoughts that you're repeatedly thinking are impacting your psychology and your biology and your behavior. You become more aware of your behavior and the habits that you have in place and how they're affecting your health and your wealth and so on and so forth. And, the words that you're speaking, how you talk, if you're complaining all the time, how does that impact me, right? And elevating your consciousness, you're becoming more aware of those things. Well, as you become more aware, you develop traits like peace, inner peace, empathy, right? These are natural. And so I've seen so many people in the Miracle Morning community that will post, I dealt with anger my entire life. I'm on day 24 of the Miracle Morning, and I'm not an angry person. It's crazy. I'm not an angry person anymore, right? And it is so interesting how Robert Kiyosaki interviewed me for Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or Rich Dad Radio, and he had read the Miracle Morning 3 times at that point, which blew my mind. And he said, Hal, you named the Miracle Morning correct. I think you named it correctly. He said, before the Miracle Morning, before you wrote that book and made up the savers, he said, every successful person on the planet, myself included, practices and swears by at least one of the savers, if not maybe 2 or 3. He said, but I had never met anyone that did all 6 practices. And he said, including myself, he said, now I do them. Every day I do the Miracle Morning.
And I do the sabers, all 6. And he also said, it was a good plug for the acronym. He goes, it works for my ADHD brain. I go SAVE. I just check them off. I go, all right, silence. Okay, now what? Oh yeah, affirmation, right? And but he said, any one of these practices will change your life. He said, the reason I think you named the book correctly is I'm experiencing miracles in my life by doing all 6. And I think that's what your community is experiencing. That's why he had been he's like, I see these people that are like, I got off my depression meds. I started a business. I finally wrote a book. Like, it's these like, not just subtle shifts. Like, there's some pretty powerful, shifts. I forgot what we were talking about.
The community. I mean, that's the thing, community. Is the resourcing yourself and being resourced.
Yeah. And so what I realized is I often say that the Miracle Morning community, if you go in there and read the Facebook post, it's like humanity at its finest. It's the most loving, supportive, like empathetic, like non-judgmental community. And I really believe that when you resource yourself, right? When you focus on elevating your own consciousness, then that just, you show up differently. You're like, oh, I realize that I'm really angry. I realize that I get triggered. I realize, like, wow, I'm not doing that anymore. Sorry, y'all. Yeah. Let's just support each other.
You're no longer projecting your traumas onto the world. You're not projecting your shit onto everyone else, because you're actually learning how to be with yourself, which is the best work that we as human beings can do in this world. It's why I always talk about the inner work. Like, it's so important. This needs to be the foundation of your entire life.
Totally.
Is the only way to heal our humanity is to heal ourselves.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
And if everyone were to do the work to really focus on their own healing, the world would automatically be a better place. Yeah. I feel like we could talk for hours and we could also go down many rabbit holes. But that might be another conversation.
Yeah, we might have to do it. Do it. Like, I'll come back.
Part 2. This one's going to be focused on the rabbit holes.
Totally. What's really going on?
What's really going on in this world? Flat Earth.
That one I actually have no knowledge of, so you'll have to. Yeah.
I mean, I'm still dabbling in that, but there are some pretty compelling. There are things that have made me think critically. About
let me ask you. We're not going to go deep into that, but because I don't, like, I'm open-minded to anything, right? Like my mantra is like, I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, especially
I don't know
look at the last, 3 years now?
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, that woke us up to,
did I ever think I was going to live in Texas?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, and it really, I watched the movie The Matrix now, and I'm like,
so
this is like a documentary. Right? Yeah. But anyway, but the flat Earth. But so here's my point: is like, if you go high enough in a hot air balloon, you can see the curvature of the Earth. So that's I'm like that. That to me is like.
But then also, also when you're looking at like the horizon, it's flat. And then why can't people travel to Antarctica?
All right. Another.
Anyways,
I need to do.
That's the thing. I'm not this or that. I'm not like
you're
globe I'm just like curious.
You're curious
because at this point,
that's always the best place to be.
I don't believe anything.
Stop making your mind up, people.
What was that Jim Carrey movie? The one where he's living in a world, but he's being controlled.
Truman Show. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, this could just be one giant. Hey.
Yeah.
Truman Show.
Yeah. Totally. It's not too far off.
So we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to leave our viewers and listeners with like just one potent truth for today's conversation. Just one.
I got one.
Oh.
So it's partly because of I think it's mostly because of our society and the societal programming that we all have grown up with and still entertain today. But most of us are not where we want to be in our lives. Right. And you could, that applies to a lot of different contexts, right? I really want to find love. I want to be more money. I want to have more followers. I want to, I wish I was, and we often look at other people that are further along and we go, gosh, I want to be where they are, but I'm not. So we're resisting reality and creating emotional pain by not just being at peace with where we are. Right? We're creating feelings of inadequacy by comparing ourselves to a future point or another person that's further along, right? We're just basically screwing ourselves up all over the place, right? And that's how we go through life perpetually. It goes back to that Thich Nhat Hanh, whatever the guy's name was, quote that we're really good at planning to live. We're not very good at living, right? And so here's one of the greatest pieces of wisdom that I ever adopted into my way of thinking, which is that wherever you want to be in your life, when you finally get to the point that you've wanted to be at, the point you've been working so hard for so long. You finally finish that book. You finally find the love of your life, whatever it is. When you finally get there, and it might take a hell of a lot longer than you think it's going to, you will always look back and realize, oh, it was supposed to take this long. Mm-hmm. The timing is perfect. And all that stress I felt every freaking day for the last 5, 6, 7 years, what a waste of my life. What a waste of energy. So if you can adopt that paradigm, the way to apply it is to wake up every day and maintain a healthy, peaceful sense of urgency to do what you need to do today to move you forward where you want to go, loving every moment of today. So you're at peace with where you are while you wake up and maintain urgency and take action to get where you want to go. Another way of saying it is love the life you have, be at peace with where you are while you move in the direction that you want to go. But yeah, that's it. Because again, you look back, you're like, oh, why did I waste? And I think that's what's going to happen, Ruby, at the end of our lives. I think we're going to look back like life is going to happen. There's going to be good shit and bad shit and terrible shit and awesome shit. There's going to be all of it. It's all going to happen, right? But like I said, the miracle life is you get to choose how you experience every moment. And I believe that we're going to look back at the end of our lives and every moment that we wasted fretting over something that we couldn't change, being angry, being upset, resisting reality. We're going to go, again, what a waste of life. I could have enjoyed every moment, even the painful ones.
Right. By being present
by embracing this moment is the best moment of my life because it's the only moment of my life. I might as well enjoy it. I can enjoy the pain. I can enjoy the sadness. I can actually be so peaceful, so present to whatever the experience is that I can call it perfect and exactly what's serving my highest good in this moment.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Hal, for being here. Thank you for being here in person.
I'm so grateful to be in person.
I'm so grateful for our continued and always evolving friendship because it has been a while now. Yeah. I'm so grateful that we're both in Austin now and we get to hang out, and just really, really honored to know you. And what you're bringing to the world is such a gift.
Yeah.
And who you're being in this world is such a gift. And so I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much.
I received that, and I would be remiss if I didn't say ditto because for everybody listening, we're sitting here because I reached out to you. Like, I follow you on social and you're brilliant. And I'm always like showing Ursula, look at Ruby. Like, she's speaking the truth. Like, I'm so proud of your boldness and your courage, and you're honoring your values and your integrity. And you posted something, and I'm just like, I text you a screenshot. I'm like, I freaking love this. I want you on my podcast. And so I invited you on my podcast. Right. And you're like, you come on my podcast. So you're coming on like next week, I think. Yeah. So so I just really want to honor you and who you are and how you're showing up. So everything you just said, I receive it. I'm not deflecting it.
Yes.
But I am also reciprocating it because I really admire you and the potent leader that you've become.
Thank you. If you love this episode with Hal Elrod, you will love the episodes linked right here. And be sure to hit subscribe to get notified when new videos are aired. And of course, as always, if you have any insights or comments or questions to share, just drop them in the comments below. Aho, family.